Welcome to the Readout Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Welchins. And slowly, our society has been slipping away from reality. The pain, joy, and risk and exhilaration of the human experience is diminishing. We're no longer experiencing the full range of human experience. And as technology is exponentially increasing, humanity is on the decline. The book we're talking about today will help you reclaim your humanity in an age where machines rule. So ditch the half-hearted attempt to take your life back. Read this book and give real life a chance. At Readout, our belief is that to lead out, you have to read out. To read out means to read well and read broadly. Almost every great leader in history has been a reader, and we wholeheartedly agree with Margaret Fuller when she said, "Today a reader, tomorrow a leader." Reading is not optional to leadership. It's not the side dish, it's the main course. And in order to become a great leader, you have to dig in. But here's the problem. We here at Readout know that in this day and age, time and energy is hard to come by. My hope is to save you that time and energy and bring you reviews of the best books that can have impact in your life right now. Then I want to teach you to get the most out of these books so that you can become the leader you've always dreamed of being faster than you ever imagined. Our dream is to create a movement of young adults passionate about reading and dangerously effective at leading. First off, I want to give a shout out. Thank you to everyone sharing us on social media. We need your help building this movement. And to anybody who's new here today, welcome to the movement. We're excited that you're here. This week, we're closing our first series called Gateway Books. We put a lot of work into selecting the books that will help you develop a serious book addiction, if not cataclysmic, full-blown book dependency. To be really straightforward, our hope with this series is to get you hooked. We want you to imagine a life where your first inclination in your free time is to pick up a book and read it. With these first 4 books, we want to help you develop the addiction. And I hope by the end of this series, you can't help yourself. You've lost control and the addiction has won. I remember getting my first cell phone, and to be honest, it was a mystery. I pulled it out of its packaging in a way that resembled someone from Kansas City picking up a true Texas barbecue beef rib, which, by the way, is the best barbecue available on the planet. If you're one of those people, you stare at it in just utter amazement for a long time, wondering to yourself, what do I do with this? Do I eat this? With my cell phone, I picked it up and it was a little flip Motorola about the fourth of the size of today's phones. It had some amazing features, a color screen, a directional pad, a slot for extra memory. I quickly memorized T9 texting. It's an amazing method where I could compose text with one hand, not looking at my phone. And get this, I could send about 100 texts a month for free. We had other amazing features too. One day I downloaded a ringtone that was supersonic. You got to check this out. I could get notifications in the middle of class, and no one knew outside of a faint ringing in their ears except me and a close group of friends who also used that ringtone. We also had an amazing game. And when I say game, I mean we had one game. Get this, there was this virtual game called Snake. You guys know what this is. It's a couple black pixels that moved across the screen and got larger and larger until it eventually ate itself. A gruesome fate, no doubt. But my friends and I, we were in awe. The phone evolved over time. You went from a nameless Nokia phone to the Razr, which was cutting edge, literally, the RZR to be specific, to the Sidekick, which flipped open with a bigger screen with a keypad under it. It was amazing. But everything changed in 2007. In 2007, Steve Jobs got up in front of an audience and gave his most iconic Apple presentation ever. I remember my friends gathering around our first iPhone. My friend Zach had just gotten one, and we couldn't figure it out. First off, it only had one button. What could you possibly do with one button? And on top of that, it had a touch screen. It seemed really complicated. Why would you need a touch screen? I share this with you just to show and kind of laugh at how short-sighted we were. We had no idea that the iPhone was going to live up to Steve Jobs' expectations and change the world. Now, can you imagine a day without your phone? What would that day look like? How would it feel? My guess is that it would feel wrong, like you were missing something. There would no doubt be some background anxiety as you experience various emotions from FOMO all the way to resentment on whoever suggested this terrible idea to you. But why do I share this? Because the reality is that shouldn't be the case. Technology was meant to be a tool liberating our lives, helping us live more richly than ever, but it has quickly transformed into the overlord, controlling most of what we do day in and day out. It's the centerpiece, and we need to learn to put it back into its proper place. Reading these days is a competitive advantage. And I mean that. If you read out, like we talk about on this podcast, read broadly, read well, and then apply what you read consistently, you will be head and shoulders over the competition in your life. But here's the problem. In order to do that, we have to be able to use technology as the tool it is versus let it use us. We have to be able to take control of technology before it takes control of us. But first, we have to know how. And for me, this was a journey. A while back, I was captive to my phone. It stole my attention and my time. It guided my actions. It took my affection. I had this idea of a fulfilling life, but it felt like the majority of my life had fallen into the same rut day after day where I wasn't living, I was just surviving. I realized this wasn't right, but I needed help breaking free from my phone. That's when I ran across the incredible book, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Here's what you got to know about Cal Newport. He is a computer science professor at Georgetown University, highly acclaimed, and the author of 6 books. Paradoxically, he's someone who relies on computers for his profession, but he's a huge proponent of putting technology in its place to live a fulfilling life, and he has. He takes the secrets he's learned over the years and puts them into one book called Digital Minimalism. Digital minimalism is the belief that less can be more when it comes to technology. I love where he stands on this. He doesn't abandon technology, and he also doesn't fully embrace it, but instead finds a middle ground where you carefully choose the technology in your life that will help you get the most out of life versus the opposite. If you're going to become a reader, this is an excellent philosophy to choose. And he's got tons of leadership gold in his book, but I just chose one excerpt just to give you a taste of how great a leader he is. Check out this quote. Of the different philosophies I studied, however, there was one in particular that stood out as a superior answer for those looking to thrive in our current moment of technological overload. I call it digital minimalism, and it applies the belief that less can be more to our relationship with digital tools. This idea is not new. Long before Henry David Thoreau exclaimed, "Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity," Marcus Aurelius asked, "You see how few things you have to do to live a life that is satisfying and reverent." Digital minimalism simply adapts this classical insight to the role of technology in our modern lives. The impact of this simple adaptation, however, can be profound. In this book, you'll encounter many examples of digital minimalists who experience massively positive changes by ruthlessly reducing their time spent online to focus on a small number of high-value activities. Because digital minimalists spend so much less time connected than their peers, it's easy to think of their lifestyle as extreme. But the minimalists would argue that this perception is backward. What's extreme is how much time everyone else spends staring at their screens. The key to thriving in our high-tech world, they've learned, is to spend much less time using technology. That's incredible stuff. And here are the shortcuts to greatness if you pick up this book. Again, every week at Readout, we're going to break down the books we review and recommend some shortcuts to greatness. In other words, if you read this book, these are 2 to 3 things that will give you the most bang for your buck. And check these out. This week's shortcuts to greatness from Digital Minimalism are, number 1, don't click like. That's a chapter from his book. I mean, doesn't that just pull you in? Don't click like. I'm like, why does he say that? It's one of my favorite chapters from Cal in this book. And here's the premise behind it. We've been trained to believe our relationships are a sum of snap streaks, likes, loves, mentions, etc. Those aren't real relationships, and life cannot be lived to the fullest without high-quality, rich relationships. Tune into this chapter. Learn how to use technology to maximize relationships and know when to opt out for the real thing. Your relationships will go to the next level applying Cal's leadership here. And the second shortcut into greatness he talks about in this book is high-quality leisure. Maybe something you've never heard of before. I know I hadn't. Well, what is leisure? It's how we spend our free time relaxing, re-engaging, and refreshing. And here's the problem Cal points out. We've settled. We spend the majority of our days in low-quality leisure. activities that just don't have the capability to bring out the most in life. Don't settle. Tune into this chapter and learn how to reclaim high-quality leisure in life. Reading is a great example of this. In order to become a reader, you have to be able to control the technology in your life. So many of us default to technology. We should instead use it as a tool, as a samurai finally wields his sword. Cal Newport teaches the strategies and convictions to help you become that samurai. Pick it up today. Well, that is it for our first ever series, Gateway Books. Pick up these books, but be careful. You may never be the same. You may look up a couple months from now and be an avid, addicted reader. That's our hope for you. Next week, we'll be kicking off our next series on PEBs, performance enhancing books, of course. These books will help you squeeze life for every ounce and become a high performer in life and in work. Tune in next week for week 1 of performance enhancing books. Here's what I want you to remember as this podcast closes. Life is too short for bad books. To see what I'm reading right now, follow me on Instagram at Jake Welchins or go to my Goodreads profile at www.goodreads.com/Jake Welchins. This podcast is brought to you by the Launchpad Podcast Collection and performed and written by myself, Jake Welchins. Podcast production by the one and only Logan Bonjean. See you next time on Read Out.